Welcome, I'm Asuma Katauka and you are watching the NewsX Eurozone. Let's take a look at the top headlines this hour. Lithuanian Prime Minister Inga Rugin has announced that Lithuania will shoot down smuggled balloons from Belarus after 4 airspace closures in a week caused by contraband-laden balloons. The Prime Minister has also warned Belarus that this may invoke NATO Article 4 security consultations. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer will meet with Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan in Ankara to discuss the sale of 40 Eurofighter Typhoon jets, including a plan for Turkey to receive 12 used jets from Qatar and Oman. The deal backed by Eurofighter consortium members Britain, Germany, Italy, and Spain. French police have arrested 2 suspects linked to the $102 million Louvre jewel heist, one of whom was about to flee to Algeria, according to Paris prosecutor. However, the Paris prosecutor has condemned the leak of the arrests, warning it could hinder the work of over 100 investigators searching for the stolen crown jewels, which remain missing. Hurricane Melissa has now intensified into a Category 4 storm with winds of 220 kilometers per hour, threatening Jamaica and Cuba with catastrophic floods, landslides, and storm surges, while Jamaican Prime Minister Andy Holness has ordered mandatory evacuations in 7 areas as authorities opened 900 shelters and closed both international airports. Poland has detained 2 Ukrainian nationals accused of spying for foreign intelligence by gathering information on Polish soldiers and critical infrastructure, according to Polish Minister Tomasz Siemoniak. The arrest is part of a broader crackdown on Russian and Belarusian espionage, comes amid what Warsaw calls a hybrid war. The UN has called for an immediate ceasefire in El Fasher, warning that civilians are cut off from food, healthcare, and safe escape routes as fighting intensifies. Aid agencies say targeted attacks on hospitals and humanitarian workers are deepening the crisis. US President Donald Trump has said he expects the United States and China to come away with a deal as he prepares to meet President Xi Jinping in South Korea this week. Speaking abroad, Air Force One, Trump has said he has a lot of respect for President Xi as he continues his tour in Asia. Brazil's President Lula da Silva has said that US President Donald Trump has assured him a trade agreement can be reached to ease punitive tariffs. Lula spoke after meeting Trump on the sidelines of the Southeast Asian Summit. Now, US President Donald Trump has said that Washington and Moscow are not playing games when it comes to weapons testing. His remarks come after Russia announced the successful completion of tests of its Burevestnik nuclear-powered cruise missile. Speaking to reporters on his flight from Kuala Lumpur to Tokyo, Trump has said that the US does not need new long-range missiles, pointing to the country's nuclear submarine stationed near Russia's coast. A day earlier, Russian President Vladimir Putin confirmed that the missile flew around 14,000 kilometers in its latest test, demonstrating the ability to bypass air and missile defense systems. Now for this discussion, we welcome Gilbert Doctorow. He's a Russian affairs expert, joins us live from St. Petersburg. Thank you very much, Gilbert, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now, can you tell us what's this updated, or why is Moscow announcing their updates in their military equipments?
I think that Moscow is today misunderstanding the whole point of deterrence. Deterrence consists of 3 components. The first is to have the wherewithal, to have the military equipment that enables you to defend yourself. The second is to make certain that your opponents or adversaries understand your willingness to use it. And third is to communicate this to the world and to your own population. On the last 2 points, Moscow is failing terribly. There is a significant question whether Mr. Putin is willing to use anything. He has the Oreshnik. It's more than a year ago, it was tested, not just by flying across empty space, but actually carrying out a mission in Ukraine. But it hasn't been used since, although there's good reason for Mr. Putin to use it to demonstrate not just a demonstration of its prowess, but to actually accomplish something in ending the war. So the announcement about the Burevestnik shows that Moscow only is looking at the first of three components in deterrence, and it isn't enough. That is why Mr. Trump has correctly identified Russia as a paper tiger.
And Gilbert, building on that, do you think this is Russia has misinterpreted, or as you said that they have misinterpreted the situation? Why do you think so, and do you think this could lead to arms race again?
Well, Russia has already won the arms race. So, and Mr. Trump's announcement, which you have just relayed, that the United States is not going to invest in new long-range missiles because of their submarines, is an admission that they have lost the race for long-range missiles, and they can't catch up. So in that sense, we have a situation that's very hard for the broad public to understand. And the leaders of these countries are engaging in, well, the question that you posed, are there games being played? Yes, there are games being played with the public to disinform the public. And Mr. Trump's announcement is disinformation, and Mr. Putin's announcement is disinformation. That is very regrettable, and it's part of a much bigger picture where it's hard for analysts like myself, not to mention the layman, to understand what's going on.
And building on that, what do you think, what other message does these statements from Trump and Putin send to other nuclear and non-nuclear nations?
Well, we are speaking about a nuclear-capable Burevestnik. Burevestnik is the Russian word for the herald of a storm. So it announces a storm. It is unique. It has no similar weapon anywhere in the world. And what's unique about it is it's nuclear-powered, and it can fly indefinitely. It can fly 14,000 kilometers. It can fly 100,000 kilometers. It can keep on flying until it's commanded to go down. So it is almost as good as a space-based weapon. In that sense, it is just on the border between what is accepted conventionally and not for the use of outer space. It is not outer space, it is inner space, but it is being used like outer space in the sense that it is flying endlessly, and it goes down when and where the commands are given from Moscow. It is impossible to stop. And it's a very nice message. But if Russia is unwilling to use the weapons it has, then what difference does it make if it has a Burevestnik in production or not?
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much, Gilbert, for sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we stay on this topic now. Russian Energy Minister Sergei Svylyov has announced a target of 40 million tons of coal exports to India by 2035, as Russia seeks to skip around the highly sanctioned oil trade with India while maintaining volumes of energy exports to the South Asian country. At present, Russia is among the leading suppliers of coal to India. Russia has proposed that India conclude an intergovernmental agreement to support the delivery of Russian coking coal and to formalize export volumes of thermal coal as part of efforts to expand exports to the Indian market. This comes amid intense pressure from the United States on India to reduce energy imports from Russia, which it maintains is fueling Russia's war effort. The USA has levied 50% tariffs on Indian imports, among the highest such tariffs on any country in the world, with half of the rate levied as a penalty for high-volume energy trade with Russia. The Russian energy minister has also announced that in spite of America's aggressive posturing and the high tariffs imposed by the USA on India, Russia and India are currently developing an intergovernmental agreement aimed at expanding cooperation in the seaborne transportation of oil and petroleum products. Now we'll welcome back Gilbert Doctorow. He's a Russian affairs expert, joins us live from St. Petersburg. Thank you very much, Gilbert, for staying with us. Gilbert, how do you think U.S. might react to knowing that Russia and India are keeping their relations strong and even expanding coal trade? And do you think it could impact India's diplomatic relations with the United States?
Well, I think Washington will not be happy about this, but I think Washington will do nothing about it because it really isn't a big threat to what Mr. Trump has just established by imposing secondary tariffs for the oil trade. Let's face it, coal is not the same value as oil is. Russia is also one of the world's biggest exporters of natural gas. But the dollar value, or the euro value of those exports of gas are tiny compared to the value of oil. That's the reality of life. Coal exports, which are scheduled to ramp up to 2030, we're now in 2025. That's not going to solve the budget problem of Russia in the next 6 months when its sales volumes of oil decrease dramatically, now that both China and India have said that they will follow the U.S. Sanctions law and stop buying Russian oil. Well, what the Russian energy minister is doing is putting lipstick on a pig. This pig is the loss, a whole of maybe 10% of the Russian budget that has just been imposed on Russia by Mr. Trump, and which India and China say they agreed to. Now, the Chinese case is more problematic. China, after all, imports most of its oil from Russia by pipelines, and that is in no way going to be impacted by anything that Mr. Trump says or does. The Chinese are not going to watch their investment, since they are co-investors in those pipelines, go to waste simply to please the vanity of Mr. Trump. So the Chinese will keep on buying oil. The Indians do not have a pipeline supply from Russia yet. We'll see, and probably not in the near future. The transport logistics is very different. So India is subject directly to the hit from the United States on seaborne oil. I imagine that the discussions, state-to-state relations between India and China, India and Russia, over finding a solution on seaborne oil, will progress very quickly, but it will not happen from today to tomorrow. And so there is going to be a certain period when Russian exports of oil to India collapse, and that time starts today. The Minister of Energy in Russia can go out and make very nice pronouncements to keep the press busy, but he doesn't fool experts.
And Gilbert, should India prioritize energy security and economic interests over alignment with U.S. sanctions towards Russia?
Well, that's a financial and geopolitical calculus that only your Prime Minister and his government can do. Sitting on the sidelines, we're not the ones to do that. He knows the reality of the economic impact of the sanctions generally, and he knows the economic impact of the loss of cheap Russian oil. India also is playing games. This visit to Saudi Arabia to partly replace Russian oil by more Saudi oil is based on the notion that, well, the Saudis are going to buy more Indian products, and therefore, even if the price is higher, the benefit to India still will be great. That's a very nice lipstick on a pig story also. The reality is that Saudis are not going to buy much from India because India doesn't have much to offer to the Saudis. The single biggest thing you export to the United States is software, IT. And although the Saudis are a modern country and have IT, there's nothing like volume the requirement for that type of assistance from India that the United States does. So what exactly is India going to export to Saudi Arabia? more mangoes, I don't think that's going to pay very far into gas exports. So I say that at the top, in the major countries, we are seeing deception for domestic consumption and for international consumption. And I think it's the obligation of experts or commentators like myself to point this out, that the leaders are intentionally deceiving the public.
Thank you very much, Gilbert, for sharing that insight. That was Gilbert Doctorow, joined us live from St. Petersburg. Thank you very much. Now we stay in the region. Lithuania's Prime Minister Inga Ružienė has said that her country will begin to shoot down smuggler balloons crossing the border from Belarus. Smuggler balloons entering Lithuania have repeatedly interrupted the Baltic nations' air traffic. NATO member Lithuania has closed Vilnius airport 4 times last week after balloons entered its airspace. Lithuania has also temporarily shut its Belarus border crossings in response to the incidents each time. Lithuania has further stated that balloons are sent by smugglers transporting contraband cigarettes. However, it also blames Belarus President Alexander Lukashenko, a close ally of Russian President Vladimir Putin, for not stopping the practice. Ružienė has called the incidents hybrid attacks and said the Belarus border crossings will be closed except for travel by diplomats and by European Union citizens leaving the Belarus. She has also stated that her government may discuss invoking NATO Article 4 of security consultations. Now for this discussion, we welcome Keith Vaz. He's a former British minister, joins us live from London. Thank you very much, Keith, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now looking at this news, what message does the statement from Lithuanian Prime Minister send to Moscow, also of course Belarus, about its willingness and Europe's willingness to confront hybrid threats?
I think the important thing about this message, Asma, and good morning from London, is the fact that the Baltic states, that's Lithuania, Latvia and Estonia, are not prepared to sit back and wait, that they are going to be very proactive. And these are countries that are at the edge of the European Union. They recently joined as NATO members, recently, I mean, in the last few years, not this year. So they're established members, but they're recent members. So they will face the brunt of any activities by the Russian government. This is an escalation, there's no doubt. It's completely unlikely, in my view, that Article 4 will be invoked, simply because you never get to that stage. President Trump is still in his negotiation phase. He wants to see Vladimir Putin discuss an end to the war in Ukraine. So the fact is, there is going to be probably no NATO intervention. In the meantime, of course, he's taken whatever action he needs to ensure that his country is safe. And this is probably the nearest that you can get to those positions. The balloons, unless you deal with the balloons, will be followed by drones. And that is why the Prime Minister of Lithuania is very concerned.
So, Keith, you're saying that these contraband cigarette smuggling could lead to further escalation? Well,
they could do, because obviously anything could be what the Prime Minister of Lithuania is saying. This is, in a sense, not an attack on Lithuania, but there's the possibility that it's a precursor to more problems in Lithuania. So better deal with this issue now.
Thank you very much, Keith, for sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now we move on and we stay in the region. Now, in Turkey, the pro-Kurdish DEM party has welcomed the withdrawal of PKK fighters from Turkish soil, calling it a critical step towards lasting peace. The Kurdistan Workers' Party, or PKK, began pulling out its forces on Sunday, marking the end of the first phase of Ankara's peace process with the Kurdish terrorist group. The DEM party has said that the move provokes the PKK's commitment to peace and urged the government to launch a second phase, introducing legal and political reforms. A parliamentary commission has been formed to draft a framework for the political integration of PKK members. Talks backed by President Recep Tayyip Erdogan are expected to continue this week, with DEM leaders set to meet him this week as well. The conflict has killed nearly 50,000 people over 4 decades, but both sides now say a new era of peace could be within reach. Now we stay in Europe. European aerospace manufacturing giants Airbus, Leonardo and Thales have signed a memorandum of understanding to create a new company that will combine their space activities in a bid understood to compete with SpaceX in the private space industry. Codenamed Project Bromo, talks between the three groups have started last year. This new company will create and develop a range of technologies and end-to-end solutions for space infrastructure, excluding space launchers. This partnership aims to advance Europe's strategic autonomy in the space sector, which is significant for telecommunications, global navigation, Earth observation, scientific research, exploration, and national security. The new company is likely to adopt a model similar to MBDA, Europe's multinational missile manufacturer, owned jointly by Airbus, Leonardo, and BAE Systems. Now for this discussion, we are joined by Keith Vaz. Here's a former British Prime Minister, joins us live from London. Thank you very much, Keith, for staying with us. Now, how significant is this news, and do you think this will make any difference in aerospace industry or space industry?
I think it's big news when you have a European rival to the Americans. It's always good news, because the best you can get for the purposes of space exploration and travel is when you have genuine rivals. And people competing. We saw that with Concorde, and we saw that with the supersonic flights. It makes a difference. People obviously have their own views on Elon Musk and his activities as far as space is concerned. But it's quite right that the European nations should be doing this. They've got some of the best scientists in the world, and they've decided to work together in order to achieve this. The only problem is, Asuma, it's very expensive. Space is very expensive. That's why it's always better to do a collaboration, because it means that you spend less money. You're not competing in a sense. However, I don't think there's a possibility of the European governments competing, giving up the competition and working with Elon Musk and his group of people, simply because they don't like Elon Musk. It is therefore something that I'm looking forward to. It's very exciting that they are doing this. But, you know, it's a lot of money. And how do you justify any expenditure to your taxpayers who are facing all kinds of difficulties? And you're saying, oh, well, by the way, we're spending some more money in order to go to Mars or to the moon or wherever. They won't like it. It's a vanity project to some extent, because we don't find anything when we get there, apart from the fact that the planet's surface, like the moon's surface, is different from Earth's. What are you going for? That is usually the objective of any trip. If you're going down from Delhi to Gurgaon, you ask yourself, why am I going? And this applies to space exploration as well. Why are we doing this? And I think this is a question that will confront these individuals. They're definitely going to ask for state funding of some kind, or state facilities or in-kind support. That is something that will always happen.
Yes, building on that, do you think should European governments increase funding and coordination to support these private sector collaboration in space technology? And what do you think would be their reason or excuses? You know, like you've mentioned that it's very different, and the reason, a reasonable reason, might be difficult for the taxpayers to agree to.
Well, we'll have to wait and see what they say. When John F. Kennedy announced, we will go to the moon and back by the end of the decade in the 1960s, you're far too young to remember that. Azuma, you probably weren't born then, unlike me. And for us oldies who remember that speech, it was so exciting, and it led to the the Apollo program, and all kinds of things happened. Of course, India has its own space giants, people who've gone into space. Everyone wants to do that. The whole nation is united. It's like winning the World Cup. People get very, very excited, but it all comes with a cost, and that is why it is important that you have a clear understanding of what the public will say when it has to come and pay for this, if it is going to be funded by public money. If it's the private sector, then of course that's different. But for sure, they will be asking European governments for some resources. And the EU, of course, as we know, has plenty of money given by its donor countries, so I'm sure they can afford it themselves.
Right. And lastly, Keith, what are the potential geopolitical implications of Europe consolidating its space capability under a single multinational entity?
Only good news. I think, as we saw with Concorde and the British and the French, old rivals over centuries, coming together to produce the greatest supersonic aircraft there has ever been. It costs a lot of money, but these kinds of collaborations are worth it. You just have to put aside your differences. But there will be countries in the EU, Hungary, Slovakia, one or two others, possibly Italy, who will say, why on earth are we doing this? So it's better it's done through the private sector, and it's better that the private sector then brings government on board. But at the moment, it is something that is only on the drawing board, but something certainly I would personally support.
Yes, we'll be eyeing that over here as well. Thank you always, Keith Vaz, for joining us and sharing that insight throughout our news. Thank you very much. Now we move on to our next news. At least 3 people have been killed in Haiti as tropical storm Melissa caused devastating flooding in the Caribbean, and meteorologists have warned that the storm could become a Category 4 hurricane, which has now become already. This comes as Hurricane Melissa intensified to Category 5 strength today as it neared Jamaica with up to 76 centimeters of rain and a life-threatening storm surge. According to the National Hurricane Center in Miami, the hurricane was centered about 130 miles south-southwest of Kingston, Jamaica, and about 315 miles south-southwest of Guantanamo, Cuba. It has also warned of life-threatening and catastrophic flash flooding and landslides throughout the weekend in Jamaica as well as southern Hispaniola. And that's a wrap on the NewsX Eurozone. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.